Staking HEX is the equivalent of DCing in every day. So if you have a bad trade, well, you're still hedged that other way, where like so long as HEX holds these price levels and goes higher into the future, you're going to end up winning hard. We might get like 80K Bitcoin next year, and then we might sell off to 30K, and then you might get the actual real supply squeeze after the ETF's been launched and everything in a year, perhaps, and going into 26 and 27. Whereas like the real pinch happens because there just is not enough Bitcoin to go around. But again, there's two theories here. One is like an organic buildup going into 25 and 26, and the other is a double bubble cycle where you get next year is good, then a down year, or half a year down, and then the following year is good. Kind of like what we saw with 2019, but on a bigger scale.
Right. That is definitely a lot of food for thought, and I think it would be really interesting because, yeah, like you said, this idea. I mean, everybody. First off, everybody has 6-figure, 120K Bitcoin programmed in, and they also, like you said, pretty much have 2025 programmed in as the year. So either one of those scenarios would be pretty amazing. I mean, like for anybody that is keeping their head, like which we should in this market, keeping your head on a swivel because you never know. I mean, you never know which way it's going to go. And
that's a really good point. And I think, not to cut you off, but just to add to your point, I think it's like this is why I'm here and why I talk about that thing is because it's like you can set up for either situation by having like a core portfolio position, like a HEX staking ladder, which is like paying you into the future, hedging against any time frame and any price drawdown. Because under the assumption that it does succeed, right? And I think because of like things like with Pulse Chain and the fork and the dilution between hundreds of sacrifice phases and Hedron and all these things that has been extracting value and just the typical bear market, all these things been extracting value out of HEX, for example, in the Pulse Chain and diluting it across 5, 6, 7, 10, 100 assets. That's like a once in a lifetime thing. Like now, once this work is done and it's out of the way and it's behind us and you actually start getting real green candles to print and then new users jumping in to get excited about something, it's going to start a train that won't be able to be stopped. And like all you're doing now is positioning yourself for an inevitable glorious bull run. Like, and it doesn't really so much matter what the time frame is, whether it's 24, 26, or 27, because you should be, if you're listening to this stream, you're probably properly hedged by having a ladder somehow in there, built in there for any of those situations.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, well said. And that's something that's so interesting to me. I'm going to ask a twofold question here. So feel free to not go way too in depth with this because I just watched you the other night. I think it was on ATX Crypto's channel with Crispy Man, which was a great stream. And he asked you, and I'm sure you get asked this a lot, but like how you did kind of get introduced to HEX, how you got introduced to Richard Hart and into the ecosystem and everything. And the other part of my question is, you just referenced HEX right there, obviously, as the way to mitigate that, keeping your head on a swivel idea and how these markets, we think we know what they're going to do, but we really don't. It's interesting to me with you being like, a TA guy and somebody who really understands that. Not that that means you're Nostradamus or anything like that, but you also like the idea of time locking like that. So I think that's like a really interesting dichotomy with you. You're not somebody who, because we hear plenty of people out there that more so now that the HEX ecosystem, as far as like investors in it, has gotten much, much larger. There's lots of people out there that's like, oh man, I'm not staking. I'm not doing that. You're crazy to stake. Or maybe they want to do it just to try to time cycle tops, as much as that may be a misnomer. So I'd like to hear a little bit about how you got into it, Richard Hart, HEX and everything, but also just that dichotomy with you of like the interest in time locking, even though you are known anyway as a TA guy.
Yeah. So you definitely set me up. You gave me you put the ball on the tee. That's perfect because the reason why I got into crypto initially, for those that don't know, is I was mining. So to understand how to build a business from the ground up and have to figure out a way to pay the mortgage, get the facility built out, get the equipment, make sure the debt's getting paid off at a certain rate, make sure energy bills are paid, and then trying to predict the damn Bitcoin market all at the same time was complicated but interesting, and it was an endeavor that I was willing to take on because I thought there was nothing more important than free sovereign individuals being able to print money legally and to try to bring back power away from this fiat like monopoly that the government holds over our head, and not that fiat hasn't brought prosperity to the world, because it has, but it's also brought the other side of the coin too. And so I think it's just good for a society to have a free and fair market, or fair as it could be. A free market and a controlled market side by side gives you optionality, and I think that's the world we're heading toward, is optionality. And so the option I chose was to sell off all the headache and the overhead in the mining business and get into something else that paid me and allowed me to print money legally, without having all the issues that goes with mining, right? And so obviously HEX isn't just like a tame little animal. It kind of is quite volatile in and of itself, so it lends itself well to TA, because if you play the TA game with HEX and its offshoot coins, you can compound and optimize your returns. But that's not to say that staking doesn't have its place, because what the staking does is it guarantees you, literally up to hundreds of percent APY over time as that share rate continues to evolve, right? And so I think what it told me was like, this is the hedge in the event that trading doesn't work out, because there's always risk you take on by taking trades. And to have that core thing always printing for you gives you an opportunity to adopt the other mindset, which is dollar cost averaging in every single day, right? Staking HEX is the equivalent of DCing in every day. So if you have a bad trade, well, you're still hedged that other way, where like, so long as HEX holds these price levels and goes higher into the future, you're going to end up winning hard, and you're going to outperform the debasement of your fiat currency, the lousy returns in the stock market indices, gold, any of that stuff, just with a regular HEX stake, because it's so new and you're printing so much interest. So it just makes sense to me, and I hope it does to you guys too. And I think that's what we're all here and excited for.
Yeah, for sure. Ewok, I'm sure you have some thoughts on the staking mechanism, because I'd like to hear actually, Ewok, what you have to say as an OG Hexican, just based on what I said a minute ago. And I'm not, by no means, I will mention these guys. I am not at all calling them out. So I don't care. Anybody can invest however they want to. I'm not telling anybody what to do. And I love these guys stream when they do. But Corey Geary and Money Talks with Dane, they're an example of somebody who they're not as keen on staking HEX. Again, totally understand, make your own choices. That's fine. And I love both those guys. But Ewok, I'm interested to hear your thoughts a little bit too, as we heard Axis is on that maybe like kind of the waning of people wanting to stake, maybe that weren't into HEX as much in the beginning and have seen the pain of this bear market and are worried about doing that through multiple markets,
Well, I think the biggest thing with the bear market, if you set yourself up properly, you can always have something coming out. And if it's not a good time, then you're absolutely free to restake it. For me, I think it was the staking ladder that kept me going. I have them coming out. I'll tell you what I have. I have them monthly for 15 years. So every month I create another one for 15 years later. Even if I'm not around, my kids will get them. So, that's the idea. I'm trying to set up them for, financial a future that they can enjoy too. I talk to my kids about it, and I want them to keep it going. Last thing I want them to do is emergency end stake everything and sell it all. So, as long as this thing keeps going, like I think it will, it's set up to, Richard even said it's set up to have meat on the bone for the later guys as well. And I think it will continue that way. And I think a lot of these cycles are going to have people finding their way into HEX once they realize what it is and it's the store of value. I think more and more people will find their way over. Like Axis said earlier, there's a lot of new people, a lot of new coins, and a lot of different little niche type things that are being created right now. Once the green candles go, I think you're going to see where people put it And honestly, like I said, I think they'll find their way over to HEX for the staking ladders. And yeah, and like I said, the biggest thing is knowing that you're earning it every day. It's constantly earning a constant DCA without really doing anything. So that's the most important thing to me.
Yeah, and it is definitely a bit of a solace, I think, when prices are tanked like they are right now. Like when you just check your HEX balance and you do see those T-shares working for you, even if ideally we always want to have dry powder on the side, but we don't always, especially when like you're targeted by the SEC and all this shit hits the fan and stuff like that. So it's nice to see those piling up in the meantime.